Welcome to Thinkers Trio. I'm Zillur Rahman. In today's episode, we dive into an alarming development that has serious implications for Bangladesh's sovereignty, security, and humanitarian responsibilities. Over the past few days, the Indian Border Security Force has reportedly pushed at least 123 individuals, including Rohingyas and Bangla speaking people, into Bangladesh without coordination or consent. Simultaneously, a renewed and rising influx of Rohingya refugees is being reported along the Myanmar Bangladesh border, driven by escalating violence and humanitarian collapse in Rakhine state. Are we witnessing a coordinated disregard for international law? What does this mean for Bangladesh's border management, diplomatic relations, and internal stability? Let's unpack the facts, the failures, and the future implications of these two-front crises. Bangladesh today stands at the intersection of two converse crises, one orchestrated at its border with India, and the other piling over from a collapsed state just to the south. On the Western Front, the Indian Border Security Force (BSF) has, without prior consultation or coordination, forcibly pushed at least 123 individuals, including Rohingyas and Bangla speaking people, into Bangladeshi territory through Kurigram and Khagrachari border points. On the southeastern front, a fresh wave of Rohingyas, driven by escalating violence and humanitarian collapse in Myanmar's Rakhine state, continues to pour into Bangladesh, challenging not only its resources but also its policy of non acceptance. Let us first examine the Indian side of the story. According to reports from the Border Guard Bangladesh (BJP), the Indian authorities forcibly brought individuals, some without any form of identification, from as far as Gujarat to Agartala by air, only to push them through porous border points. Eyewitness in Shantipur, Khagrachari, said these people were warned by BSF troops never to return to India again, under threat of being shot. Among the 123 individuals, at least 35 are identified as Rohingyas, while the rest are Bangla speaking people whose nationality remains unverified. This move is not only shocking but diplomatically regressive. Bangladesh was neither notified nor consulted. At a time when India claims strong bilateral ties and strategic alignment with Bangladesh, often championing its neighborhood first policy, such unilateral action is both unexpected and unacceptable. The incident has prompted BGB to issue high alerts across the border and lodge a strong protest with BSF, requesting flag meetings at multiple levels. The police headquarters has simultaneously directed superintendents of police in 31 bordering districts to remain on high alert, especially as India-Pakistan tensions intensify. The risk of cross-border spillover under these circumstances cannot be overstated. The question arises, why would India, a country that routinely presents itself as a responsible regional actor, behave in such a unilateral and confrontational manner? One possible explanation is the increasingly hardline domestic politics in India, especially in relation to migrants, Muslims, and stateless populations. However, choosing to dump such a volatile problem on Bangladesh without dialogue is both diplomatically disrespectful and geopolitically short-sighted. These positions violate international norms and diplomatic principles and risk undermining a long-standing, if occasionally fraught, bilateral relationship. If this were not enough, the southeastern frontier of Bangladesh is once again under silent siege. Over the past year, at least 118,000 new Rohingya refugees have entered Bangladesh, according to the Refugee Relief and Repatriation Commissioner. The current influx averages 20 to 30 individuals per day, although locals in Cox's Bazar suggest the number is likely far higher. Many Rohingyas now reside outside official camps, some renting houses and blending into host communities. The result? Rising crime, smuggling, and fears that these undocumented populations could become hotbeds of trafficking and extremism. The testimonies of the new arrivals paint a harrowing picture of life in Myanmar's Rakhine state. People like Hamida Begum, Sabera, and Mukbul Ahmed recount stories of death, starvation, rape, and extortion. Many have walked for months, crossing mountains, rivers, and jungles, relying on strangers for food, all to escape a land where bombs fall indiscriminately and women are taken away by force. Some fled after losing family members to violence, others because the price of rice in Rakhine soared to 1 lakh kyat per sack, equivalent to nearly $30 or more, an astronomical sum in a region paralyzed by poverty. More worryingly, both Myanmar's military and armed insurgent groups like the Arakan Army and ARSA, Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, are allegedly involved in gross human rights violations. Locals claim that young Rohingya men are often conscripted by force, sent to the front lines in battle against the military. Those accused of sympathizing with ARSA are tortured, and entire businesses and homes are seized. One refugee claims his medical store was taken over merely because he was suspected of selling medicine to insurgents. In response to the influx, Bangladesh's interim government had initially declared a policy of non acceptance, stating clearly that it would not take in any more Rohingya, but the reality on the ground is starkly different. With a porous 271 kilometers border and humanitarian impulses that prevent turning away the suffering, Bangladesh has been unable to prevent new arrivals. Local NGOs and refugee committees estimate that nearly 50,000 Rohingyas are now living outside designated camps, unregistered and beyond the radar of relief efforts. This situation is not only unsustainable, it's dangerous. Smuggling, drug trafficking, arms movement, and even radicalization are becoming serious concerns in the camps and surrounding areas. Local communities in Cox's Bazar, particularly in Ukhia and Teknaf, are increasingly vocal about the strain the refugee presence places on resources, employment, and law and order. There is growing apprehension that if the trend continues unchecked, the social fabric of these areas may be irreparably damaged. Internationally, the response has been muted. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, continues to support relief operations, but admits that the current situation in Rakhine is far from conducive for repatriation. Rohingyas continue to flee not because of economic opportunity, but because of the sheer desperation to survive. Shari Nizman, spokesperson for UNHCR in Cox's Bazar, recently stated the situation in Rakhine is not safe for return. Rohingyas face security threats, lack of food, lack of freedom, and live in constant fear. The conditions required for safe, dignified, and voluntary return are simply not there. At the diplomatic level, Bangladesh is now being forced to consider engaging not just with the military junta in Nepadu, but also with non-state actors like the Arakan Army. Officials have hinted that back-channel efforts are underway to explore whether informal understandings can be reached with these armed groups to enable any form of future repatriation. This is a risky but perhaps necessary step, as the Myanmar central government has largely lost control of key territories, and meaningful coordination might now lie in the hands of regional warlords. Meanwhile, the Rohingya population in Bangladesh continues to grow, both within and beyond camps. Since the massive influx in 2017, over 1 million Rohingyas have sought refuge in Bangladesh. Despite repeated efforts with UNHCR, China, and even ASEAN countries, not a single meaningful phase of repatriation has occurred. Instead, new camps have sprung up, crimes have increased, and host communities have grown wary. What options then does Bangladesh have? Firstly, Dhaka must respond assertively to India's unilateral actions. While protest notes have been issued, there must be stronger diplomatic pressure and engagement at the highest levels. Any further pushbacks must be stopped immediately, and a framework for cross-border coordination and communication should be established to prevent recurrence. Secondly, the government must think its Rohingya management strategy. This involves tighter security at the Myanmar border, faster biometric registration of new arrivals, stricter surveillance of camps, and a crackdown on those living outside without authorization. The policy of no new refugee acceptance must be re-evaluated, not for its compassion, but for its practicality and enforceability. Thirdly, the international community must be galvanized again. The global narrative has largely moved on from the Rohingya crisis, but it is vital to bring it back to the forefront, especially with growing regional instability. Countries like the US, EU members, and Gulf states must be reminded of their commitments to pardon sharing, funding, and refugee diplomacy. Lastly, Bangladesh must balance security with humanity. It cannot allow its borders to become soft targets for geopolitical dumping grounds, nor can it allow the plight of vulnerable people to be ignored. The tightrope between sovereignty and compassion is not easy to walk, but it must be done with clarity, unity, and resolve. In sum, the recent developments, from India's breathless pushbacks to Myanmar's silent genocide, underscore the need for a new, robust national strategy. Bangladesh is not just a host country, it is now a frontline state in a worsening humanitarian crisis, caught between two giants, one democratic but increasingly illiberal, the other autocratic and imploding. In such a moment, silence is not strategy and sympathy is not policy. Bangladesh must act and act now. As we have seen, Bangladesh now stands at a critical geopolitical and humanitarian crossroads, challenged on one side by India's unilateralism and on the other by Myanmar's internal collapse. While our instincts tell us to respond with empathy and restraint, the time has come for firm strategy and uncompromising national action. This is not just about border control, it's about sovereignty, international law, and the dignity of our people. Thank you for listening. Stay informed, stay engaged, and until next time, this is Zillur Rahman on Thinkers Tube.